started. Tonight is the February 21st, 2023 Planning Board meeting. First item on the agenda is a public hearing for 6384 Mill Street. Site plan, amend the previous approved site plan. So I think we'll start with having a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion, open the public hearing.
I'll second.
David seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Warren, you want to let people know what's going on?
Sure. We have images we're going to put up.
Okay.
That's our guru. Technical guru.
Yeah, stand to the
Which one do you
side.
want the
so-
site?
Yes, I will.
You want the site plan up?
Yeah, you certainly can, although I'll let Christian talk about that. But in general, so this application for 6376 Mill Street, new construction, the building kind of across from the post office. Right now it's a vacant lot. It's a lot with a lot of constraints. Well, it's mostly vacant. There's a Chamber of Commerce little building right on the edge of it. But it's a lot with a lot of constraints. There are sewer easements for the village of Rhinebeck that run through. One I think is actively used. The other is an easement that may or may not be actively used. But nonetheless, we have to avoid constructing on top of those. So there's the shaded gray areas. It's a site that has the building that Frontier Communications has in the lower right there to the south. And this just south of that is the Reformed Church and its cemetery. The site is low-lying. It's mostly parking. It's entirely parking, I guess, at this point, with the exception of the Chamber of Commerce kiosk. And it's low-lying, and it tends to collect a lot of water from neighboring properties. It flows. Some of it flows from the church property. Some of it flows, or appears to flow from the CVS property, but it sort of coalesces in that area. And there's just poor drainage. There is a storm sewer in the street. And I don't believe there's much of a direct connection there. In fact, I think there's a couple of existing dry wells that Christian Paggi, TE, will talk about. Our proposal is to radically improve the retention of stormwater and drainage in the site, but also to build a building there. So the last time we were before the planning board, which was maybe a couple of years ago, the proposal was to put a small hotel, called a boutique hotel, with retail on the front, facing Route 9, right where the bus stop is there, fairly small retail space, and then at the back of that, entrance to an accessible hotel unit on the ground floor, and then on the two upper floors, accessed via stairs only, additional hotel units for a total of 9 hotel rooms. The market for hotel rooms hasn't gone away, but the owners feel that actually apartments is a more critical demand here. And so the current proposal is to maintain, for the same footprint and the same basic design of the building, a retail area on the front, on Route 9 there, but to put in the back at the ground floor an accessible apartment, and then on the upper floors, 3 additional accessible, not accessible, 3 additional apartments, 2 on the second floor and 1 on the third floor, for a total of 4 apartments in the building. As I say, there's some minor adjustments to the windows fenestration on the north and south sides, but really no change to the front of the building. Very minor tweaks to the back of the building.
Shall I bring the elevations?
Sure, yeah, I might as well show those. The bulk of the issues that we've been working with have been, actually for the past year and a half, stormwater management and what to do with all the water that collects on the site. And again, Christian's been working very closely with the village consulting engineer, Ty and Bond, to get that resolved. These are floor plans for the building. And so on the right-hand side is the first floor, where there's an entrance to the retail space on the left and an entrance to a stair that goes up to the apartments on the right. The second floor has, again, 2 apartments, as I mentioned, and the top floor has 1 2-bedroom apartment. So that's again, within the footprint of the building as designed and approved a couple of years ago. Elevations are on the succeeding pages. That's the site plan again.
The elevations are in a different file.
Oh, they're in a different file. They're in the file that had the plans and the floor plans.
Amended site plan apartments says site plan. That's the letter.
That's engineering details. There, okay, so if you just go down on that page, you were there.
Oh, I was there? Okay.
Yeah, it's just following pages in that same file.
No, it's over the apartment set.
There you go. Okay, so yes, there is on the right is the street elevation, basically facing west, although the new one, did I send that to you, Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
The hub should have disappeared, and there's notes on there about the materials, which was a request at the last planning board. So this is not the most current file, but the building looks essentially the same. We pulled the double windows apart a little bit, which is a discussion in the last meeting. We relocated the grill for the PTAC unit for the top unit on the top apartment on the right. But for the most part, it looks the same, except it's not being called the hub anymore, since its sign is not part of the application. And then the next drawing down is the other two sides of the building. So the view on the left is the one that faces the alley between this building and its neighbor to the north. This is on the left is the south-facing elevation you will see from the entrance to the parking lot in front of the Frontier building. Should Frontier ever elect to sell the property or develop the property and build a building immediately adjacent to this, we would have to close up those windows. And it was designed with that possibility in mind, should it be necessary. And then on the right-hand side is the rear elevation, so it's really a very long, narrow building with an entrance on the ground floor to the first floor apartment only, and the apartments above are access to the door at the front of the building and the stair at the front of the building. Materials are brick on the front part of the building and hardy board, smooth hardy board on the rest of the building, clapboard with a asphalt shingle roof and two lighted light windows. And we're trying to be a good neighbor. If there are any questions about the design, there are some renderings too, which date from the previous iteration, but essentially are unchanged. But that's the substance of the architecture, and again, the chief plan is simply changing it from hotel units to apartments.
Do you have the renderings? Because that might be easier for people to understand.
That might be in a different file.
Different file. Was it in a prior meeting?
No, they came in.
Let me see. Did you have the renderings in the meeting of the 17th?
We looked at them in that meeting.
Okay, let's see.
Apartment set, maybe.
Okay, yes, further down, that had some images. Again, that's the earlier plan set, but there is the rendering at the end of the building from the street when it was still being planned for a hotel, but it's substantially going to look really almost entirely identical from the street, only the entrance on the right will be to the apartments rather than to the hotel upstairs. And that's a view looking up from south. With the Chamber of Commerce building moved very slightly off the property line, so it can remain basically in place.
So, you want to go over the engineering
Yes, I
before
think
we have public comments?
Yeah, sure.
Good evening, I'm Christian Paci. Thank you, Warren. He pretty much covered most of the site plan elements. I'll run through the rest of them and some of the engineering. If you could pull the site plan up.
Site plan?
Yes, please. Just the application.
No, that's not.
So, again, the site plan is pretty much identical to the previously approved site plan. The site currently exists as a one-way in, one-way out. The Ingress is through the adjacent property to the south, through the Frontier property, with all exiting traffic through the subject property just to the north of the proposed building. We are improving the existing parking lot by the entire parking lot surface will be resurfaced. We are also formalizing some of the parking stalls and bringing the stalls up to code as far as dimensions, and providing some new curbing to kind of straighten up and round off some of the existing edge of pavement. So if you're looking at the existing conditions plan compared to the proposed, you'll see that we're just adding a little bit of impervious in some of the areas just to formalize some of these parking areas that exist along that northerly side. As Warren mentioned, this gray area, the gray shaded area, shows the existing village sewer easement. That has dictated the location of the building as well as the stormwater improvements. If you want to go to the next, I believe sheet 3. One more. There we go. We are showing our proposed drainage, water, and sewer. The building is proposed to be connected to the existing village sewer main that is located in that southerly easement area. The purple line is showing the building sewer line coming out to a new manhole and then connecting to the village sewer main. That will either be via a stub that's tapped into the sewer main. Ty and Bond in their latest memo indicated they would prefer a doghouse manhole at that location, which is not a problem.
Are we, Christian, is this the sewer?
Yes,
Okay.
that
All right,
purple
so
area.
The blue line is the water.
The water service,
Water.
correct.
Okay.
And the water service is proposed just to be connected to an existing service stub. We met out there with the water department to verify that property is currently served by water. They believe it is, but we'll have to verify that also in the field. So, but going to the drainage, the entire building is proposed to be collected via the roof leaders and a. You could stay back on that. Yeah.
that same one.
And we will likely collect the roof leader discharge with a manifold pipe around the building, and then discharge to that proposed catch basin 3, which is right in the center, and then direct all of that runoff to the rear. So the rear of the lot is currently experiences quite a bit of flooding, and that was referenced by Warren when he was walking through the site plan. We're proposing quite a bit of subsurface Coltech chambers to mitigate that existing flooding. The last time we were here, we mentioned that the size of that Coltech system is limited by the proximity to the existing sewer line. I don't think you can see it here. Is this the old line?
Yeah, this is.
This is the old plan. Yeah. Well, I have this. So I tried to show this. This is a 25-foot offset from the existing sewer main.
Okay.
All right. It's not shown on that plan. We showed it on the new revised plan, just to demonstrate how close we're getting to that line and the limits that we really are working with. So after we revisited that, we were able to add 2.5 more units, and these units are, each one of these little boxes is a unit. So we were able to add 1.5 units over here and 1 unit here, just by kind of shifting things around and squeezing it in. So not a huge increase, but I think we'll take whatever we can get.
So this is the area you added the units in?
Correct.
Okay.
Right here.
Both of them, yes. There was 1.5
And
added
this
to
is the offset?
Right.
Okay.
So by adding that additional storage, originally we were able to capture and infiltrate for the smaller southerly section, the 1 and 2 year storm, and or the easterly section, but the larger sections, we were able to capture up to the 100-year storm. So by increasing the size by 2.5, we were able to capture and infiltrate up to the 10-year storm for that westerly system, the smaller system, and almost the entire 100-year storm with the easterly system. One of Ty and Bond's comments from their original review was to model it with a more conservative void ratio for the stone bed. So basically just lowered the amount of available storage in the model. So that basically brought us back to where we started. So it was kind of a wash, but we are adding 2.5 units and additional stone. But the model shows that westerly system capturing and infiltrating up to the 1 and 2 year storm, and similar to the first go around, the easterly system was capturing up to the 100-year, but not including. So in our letter, we referenced that the model also is based on a very conservative infiltration rate of 10 minutes per inch of percolation or infiltration. Actual infiltration rate that we tested out in the field was around 35 inches per hour. So if you were to incorporate that infiltration rate into the model, we are more than accommodating the 100-year storm on that easterly system. And the westerly system is showing an inch of flooding during the 100-year storm. So it's not capturing it, but we're infiltrating the whole thing, but it's only producing a puddle. So, which is likely what will be experienced, but we try to do these models with some conservative numbers because over time they can, silt up if they're not maintained, and so there's reasons for factor of safety. But there's also measures to maintain the system to prevent silting up or to be able to maintain it or to clean it out if they do get silted up. That's the isolator rows that are shown in the hatched area. It's the first row. That row is actually wrapped in fabric, and there's only one pipe that discharges to that, and that's to protect the system. That's most of your storms are going to go to that first row, and that's where the sediment really has the potential to discharge to. The larger storms will then overflow into the rest of the system. What that isolator row does, it allows you to basically get a vac truck in there and jet out that line and refresh it. They'll also be fitted with inspection ports so that you can monitor sediment buildup and all that. And all of the catch basins also will be fitted with a 2-foot sump to provide some additional sediment capture volume. So with that said, I think it's our opinion that this is a drastic improvement from what's out there. The proposal the project is only proposing, I think, a 2.5% increase in impervious area. So we're proposing almost 3,000 cubic feet to offset, not that 2.5% of 2.5% increase, but really just to mitigate this existing flooding issue. So I think that the applicant has gone above and beyond to try to make that work. So we got Ty and Bond's letter. I think most of their comments have been addressed. There was a few comments about adding some details for bollards, and I know that we need to provide a detail for the trash enclosure pad. That will be added to the plan. They're also looking for us to show existing electric, cable, telephone, utility on the site plan. We're asking that be a condition of approval. We just need to get a utility mark out done and get that surveyed. We're showing all other utilities, water, sewer, and storm on the plan. So,
One outstanding comment that I saw that seemed more contentious, I think, or at least more substantial, was provide a pre-construction hydrology calculation so they can do a before and after comparison.
so we can absolutely provide that, and I will provide that if that's really what they're looking for. I just need to speak with,
Okay.
to Rob. It's clearly gonna show that it's less, and I provided, an argument for how that's could be inferred reasonably, just by looking at the model results. So it's not a question of if it's going to show an improvement, it's obviously going to be an improvement. So we can do that. It's more of an exercise. It's a paperwork exercise. So
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. It's just, it's more than just providing a pre-construction analysis because it's an existing site, and I just need to be on the same page with Rob as far as how he wants me to model it. But I don't see how it wouldn't show an improvement with what we're doing.
Any other comments from the board before we go to the public?
So these other comments outstanding, the one with the Department of Transportation?
So the Department of Transportation permit will be obtained as part of the building permit process. Before we do any work in the right-of-way, we'll need to obtain a permit from the DOT. So they have already provided a conceptual approval for the project for the previous application. Nothing in the right-of-way has changed. Typically, that's the level of approval that the planning board needs to issue a site plan approval or seeker determination. At least that's our experience.
Yeah, they generally don't want to get into the details until you get an approved site plan.
And the majority of the permit is contractor information, so it's more of a construction permit as opposed to a regulatory approval.
Does anybody from the public have anything to say?
Should we open the public hearing?
We already did.
It's open, Council. Okay.
Any comments at all? Then, anybody else from the board?
I would say the only concern that I have is the public telephone, which is out on the public street, which they don't own, but it's in front of their building, and it's graffiti riddled, and the speaker thing has been broken where there's no bond to it, it's just hanging by wire, so I think that needs to either be repaired or taken away through, going to Frontier, because it's ugly and
The last public phone in the mosquito net
It's
thing.
historic in and of itself.
well, it can be fixed,
This,
but,
the payphone here, Michael?
yeah.
Payphone to be removed?
It says to remain.
Remain,
the-
okay, that's different than
I
remove.
hear you, and I'm happy to write a letter, but we have no control.
No.
It's not owned by the applicant,
Right,
and
but-
it's not on the applicant's property. So
Right.
I don't want to create a situation where
No.
the applicant.
No, I understand it's not yours, but,
To-
to have a
to
nice building like that, you shouldn't have this piece of junk in front of it.
Well, I took graffiti off of the phone building itself. I wasn't allowed to do it, but I just went and did it. But, so that just gives you an idea of the state of oversight with that.
So-
I see that Central Hudson has agreed to move the transformer down, so
So-
we'll be in your way.
We had preliminary discussions with them during the last approval process, and we didn't understand it to be an issue. We haven't continued those discussions. We will again, once we get closer to getting permits for construction.
And you're all set at the point to move the visitor center, whatever, down out of the way as well.
Right, we have the agreement with Frontier to allow that.
Okay.
And, the plan is to put it on some kind of skids and pull it slowly so if it moves.
Yeah, it's only a foot or so on your property.
Yeah.
Just two quick things. With respect to the maintenance of the stormwater system that you referred to, just even checking the inspection ports and jetting the system as needed, what's the mechanism that's in place to ensure that that happens? I know it falls to the property owner, but left unattended, which is the history of this parking lot over the years. that can be a real problem, and all the capacity we talked about goes away in that situation.
So, I mean, it would be an ongoing condition of site plan approval to maintain the stormwater features of the site, and if there's not already a note on the plans, we could certainly add one that says, you know, stormwater features must be maintained. I don't know if the Village of Rhinebeck deals with stormwater maintenance agreements. It's something that could be proposed, but you already have enforcement over the site plan. So once approved and built, they have to continue to comply with it.
Right. It's just my experience is that notes on the site plan tend to get lost, and site plans tend to get, you know, put in big stacks of site plans, and, you know, that's just what happens, right? Things accumulate over the years, things get forgotten, so I
We
was
can also
wondering,
put it in the minutes that.
I was gonna suggest the minutes or the resolution or something, because it seems like most of the comments have centered around stormwater management, and most of the issues with the site relate to stormwater management, so
We
that's
can
a
make
big
it a
one.
condition of the approval, if that's agreeable, so that it's actually in the minutes.
Yeah, I think that would be stronger, just to keep the focus on that, so if anyone were to refer back, that would just scream that someone should be paying attention to it.
Sure, and I mean, just for the record, when the current owners purchased this lot, I think the stormwater was already failing.
Yeah.
So it's not a condition that was created by the current owners.
No.
It's something that was inherited, and, you know, current owners have demonstrated that they maintain their property. So I don't see it being an issue moving forward.
Very much so. So, no, I'm talking very historically with the
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I arrived late, and I do appreciate the amount of revisions that were made to the plans and all the comments that were taken into account. The one that I didn't see anywhere, and I may have missed this, was just, there was a question about how the trash for these units was handled, and whether there'd be rolling cans or what the status of the dumpster enclosure is, which I understand needs some work for the town and the village engineers. But has that been resolved, and do we have some clarity on that?
So there's an existing dumpster that's there. We went back, there is no dumpster pad, so we're gonna be adding a pad, and there will be an enclosure that will be, you know, gated off.
Last meeting, it was uncertain whether that was for
That
this
would-
parcel or that was for Frontier. Have we clarified that that is in fact for this building?
Now, that was always for the telephone building, and that can service the other property as well. I think it has enough capacity there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important just to call that out as well. The alternative seems like, you know, we're gonna need another dumpster enclosure somewhere for this building if that doesn't get worked out, or there's gonna be a series of 4 or 5 cans left alongside the building, which is already fairly tight to the way the roadways circulate around the building. So it just seems like an important factor to get worked out.
And
Well, the proposal is to share the dumpster.
That's exactly right.
Right, so as long as we've heard them.
There's ample room in that dumpster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we also noted in the prior meeting, there seems to be a fence around this. Will the trucks be able to get at the dumpster?
Yes, if you go to the next sheet, there's a vehicle.
Is this the new
Circulation
plan
plan.
set though? I'm not sure this is.
It should, I don't think that changed, so keep going down. And right there now, scroll over to the right if you can. No, keep going.
To the right.
To the right.
Oh, to the right.
Yep. There you go.
I see,
There's the refuse
I see.
truck.
So you would envision that, you know, I'm leaving my apartment with a bag of garbage, I would cross the parking lot and put it in the dumpster. There's no cans in the property itself.
No, no, that's what the current commercial tenants in the telephone building do. And they bring their household garbage as well, so we get everyone's.
What they do.
That's a good idea for closure, right?
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So where do we stand in seeker on this? We needed an amended seeker or no?
We requested that you reaffirm the prior seeker determination that you adopted, since the usage is less than what was proposed for the hotel use. There'll be fewer people on the property, fewer cars.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
So it would be a motion to reaffirm the negative declaration adopted on December 15th, 2020.
Thank you. Do I have such a motion?
I'll make that motion. What she said.
All those in favor? Aye.
Did anyone second that? Yeah. Jeff says second.
I'll second.
After the
I'm
fact.
sorry.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we got that out of the way. Do we want to move forward on this on conditions that the engineer is satisfied, or want to wait a couple weeks until we get the sign off from an engineer?
So the only things that are left, again, are minor details, with the exception of that one comment that they didn't provide a response to.
Yeah.
And if I can go into more detail to explain to the board why I believe that it's clearly showing an improvement to stormwater. The comment that they had is really kind of a checklist item that they're going through a SWIP, and they don't see a pre-construction analysis versus a post-construction analysis, which is typical. This is a redevelopment where we're changing some of the hydrology because we're taking existing impervious areas and rerouting them to other areas. But what we're showing is that even by doing that, we are infiltrating. The only areas that we're changing are that smaller infiltration area that we have, where we know that we're only capturing about the 2-year storm. That's what the model is showing. We shrunk that drainage area down because of that, because it's smaller. We captured some of that area and sent it to the other one, the larger one that had more capacity. And that is now able to, the model, the conservative model is showing that it can capture and infiltrate up to the 100-year storm, which we know that area is not doing right now. So even with that increased capacity, or that increased drainage area, which includes the entire new building, that area is capturing and infiltrating up to the 100-year storm. The smaller area is capturing and infiltrating up to the 1 and 2 year storm. But we're not changing anything in that drainage area except for decreasing the amount of runoff generated in that drainage area by rerouting it to the other drainage area.
So to be clear, we're asking that you waive that requirement. You've been out there, you see what the pre-construction condition is, and obviously the Coltac systems and the grading are going to be an improvement. So if you want it, we ask that it be a condition because, you know, as Christian just went through, he's demonstrated that the stormwater will be an improvement. But ideally, you would waive it and save the cost and paperwork of review, but up to the board.
Yeah,
There are 6 minor comments on the tie and bond final list here. I guess.
yeah, they're pretty minor. I mean, the detail of a bollard and where the cable comes in and things like that, which
Yeah, I don't think there's anything.
we've approved this before,
Yeah,
and they've actually improved the drainage since.
Yeah, just to get back to the comment you made, Christian. So you said you're going to take steps to diminish the amount coming to here. How are you going to do that? Is it going to be by the grading of the, so in other
Yes.
words, you're going to try to, this is a big berm here by the cemetery. So you're going to try to get more of the drainage to go into that.
Do you have the stormwater report, the drainage report in there? I can show you exactly what we're doing.
I'm not sure we have that.
Is it this?
Yep.
Well, that's a book. We don't.
Well, I'll show you. There's one page in it.
That didn't make it to the PDF file.
Okay.
This whole, so this is a drainage area map.
Yeah.
This whole orange area used to go here to the small area. We're picking that up, including the entire new building, and setting it that way. So we're significantly reducing the contributing area to this point
Okay.
because we don't have much infiltration capacity, and we're setting it there. And even with all of that additional area, we are capturing and infiltrating up to the 100-year storm, which again, we know is not happening today. So, and
Okay, and the area you just showed just on that was all of this area here
exactly.
is being directed through, here you've got your catch and the rest of it going to here.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you have the catch basin right here.
Yes.
So we're regrading to send all of this area and a little bit uphill of it into that catch basin, along with the proposed building.
Right.
So this whole area, pretty much the rest of the site, with the exception of the last 50 feet or so of the driveway, are going to that large area.
think to address one of Darren's concerns, if 5 years from now, there's a major summer thunderstorm, and there's several inches of water in the parking lot, it'll be obvious that you have to get in there and clean out the system. You know, so I don't think, I mean, as they get lost in the plans, no one ever looks at them anymore. Clearly, people will see there's a flood in the parking lot, again, get out there and, clean out the system.
And there's incentive for the property owner too. He's providing an amenity to his tenants. He's gonna wanna keep the parking area, available. So, there's an incentive there to keep the system
It'll be
maintained.
fairly obvious if it needs cleaning.
Right.
Christian, in your report, your drainage report, is there a calendar for how often these systems have to be cleaned?
There's DEC standards for, maintenance and inspections that we can include and put that in an appendix to this report. Typically, that's used as an appendix to like the stormwater management or stormwater maintenance agreement that Victoria was referencing.
Well, so, it's something that, if it's a condition of approval, we can provide to the planning board, that, there be a maintenance schedule that must be followed.
Okay.
Which typically includes, vac truck of the catch basins, their sumps, and at least inspecting the ports, twice a year, and then cleaning as needed.
So what do you think?
The conditions seem minor enough to me that we can move forward. And I'm also
Okay.
comfortable waiving
We just put the 6 of them in the,
All right, so-
we have them highlighted here.
I'll entertain a motion to approve it with the conditions that we have the updated architectural that Warren talked about, the changes. 'Cause we didn't see those today.
Oh, there,
If you need a date, February 13th, 2023. That would be the most current site plan.
Okay,
It's right there.
all right. And that there's a note on the plan that there'll be regular maintenance of the stormwater system. And it'll be noted in the minutes as a condition of approval that there will be regular maintenance of the, and then the fourth condition would be that they satisfy all the remaining engineering comments. And that before a building permit, you get a sign off from the engineer that all the comments have been satisfactorily addressed,
including the pre-construction analysis?
at their discretion. Whatever they feel is appropriate, we'll live with.
But we don't want to waive that condition. They were appealing to us to potentially waive that condition so the engineer wouldn't.
I don't think we want to overrule the engineer. I think
Okay,
if he wants it, we should stick with our engineer's advice. But I don't know if it's necessary myself, but I'm not an engineer.
okay.
So we have 4 conditions on the table. Do I have a motion?
Just to clarify, 3 was going to be per a maintenance schedule that they would provide. So that condition to maintain the stormwater system would be per the maintenance schedule the applicant would provide. So that would be in the resolution, easy to see.
Okay, good. Any second? Any first?
I'll second.
Any motion?
I'll make the motion then.
Okay, Aaron makes the motion.
I'll second it.
David makes the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work and especially improving that existing condition which had nothing to do with you about the flooding that occurs on that property now.
Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a new business item. 42 Mulberry Street, preliminary site plan discussion and working session with a presentation on a proposal to demolish an existing 1.5-story single-family dwelling to be replaced with a new 2-story single-family dwelling. On 42 Mulberry Street. Everybody had a chance to go look at the property?
Yep.
I think it is in the newly expanded.
It hasn't been approved yet, but it still is on the state and the National Historic.
I'm sorry, it's not in the historic district, the Rhinebeck Historic District, but it is in the,
It is still protected by the demolition.
State and federal.
is subject to the demolition law
Okay,
of the
just
Rhinebeck
for
code.
context, I think
Preliminary.
photos.
Yeah,
This is Mulberry Street. This is the house.
They haven't formally submitted yet, this is preliminary.
See the house to the left?
That's actually the wrong residence.
That's what you're
42
showing.
Mulberry, okay. I
Yeah,
get
that
you.
one. So just to show the context of the neighborhood, so this is the one to the left of it. This is the left side of the house. This is the front of the house.
I have all those right here as well.
Okay, for anyone in the audience that would like to see.
Understood.
A little bit of a driveway coming onto the lawn there, and that's the right side of the front.
This is one of the houses on that block that has like no backyard. Is this one of the?
There is a photo of the backyard in your pack.
Yes. Seth, were these in any of the electronic documents we received?
They were not.
Okay.
Nope. Since this was an informal discussion,
Yeah, okay.
I just decided, we'd go ahead and provide the information in a basic format. Have evolved plans here, and then also, some presentation for you in front of you.
Can you state your name for the record?
Absolutely. Good evening, Seth Stickle with Mark Kaminsky, BELSPC. Tonight it's my privilege to be here for a discussion with this board relating to the redevelopment of 42 Mulberry Street and the potential for this action to be subject to Chapter 64 of the Zoning Code, the Historic Buildings Protection. Before we begin discussion of the project, I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce my clients, my parents, Donna and Rick Stickle, and their history as it relates to this project, the subject building, and the village of Rhinebeck. I know that the period of significance for historic building protection is currently 1700 to 1930, with the potential expansion to 1970. My father's sixth great-grandfather was one of the 35 Palatine families which began settlement of this village, the town, and the surrounding area in the 1700s. At least 5 generations of my mother's family resided in the hamlet of Rhinecliff. Their history is connected to the historic family names such as the Atkins, Dietrichs, Moore, Schultz, Tenbrooks, and of course, Callum Stickles. All of them were stewards of local homes and land on Ackerhook Road, Chestnut Street, Kramer Road, Montgomery Street, Mulberry Street, East Market Street, and Violet Hill Road. My father's grandfather was treasurer and board member of the Rhinebeck Savings Bank, where his picture still hangs in the lobby today. 3 out of their 4 parents graduated from Rhinebeck High School. My grandfather, both on the same baseball team in the 1940s. My mother's parents' first apartment was on Chestnut Street, and my father's above the Ben Franklin's, which is now the bank parking lot on East Market Street. After raising 4 children to school age on Ackerhook Road, my mother's parents purchased 26 Chestnut Street in 1963. Her father working as an IBMer, and mother teaching at the Rhinebeck Elementary School until retirement. As their family of 3 and business grew, my father's parents purchased 42 Mulberry Street, the subject of today's conversation, and at the same time established A.L. Stickles 5 and Dime in 1951. A Rhinebeck institution and family legacy my brother continues to operate today, nearing 75 years in business. My parents raised our family just over the Berkshires in western Massachusetts, pursuing their higher education and career as teachers. My father, a middle school and high school earth science and astronomy teacher, and my mother, an early childhood educator and community partnership founder. Over 15 years ago, in retirement, they returned to the area to care for their aging parents and assist in property upkeep while maintaining their own 1800s home in Claremont. Traveling that 13 miles with multiple trips daily, they both continued their long family history of community involvement. My mother investing her time in the Church of the Messiah, making food for the less fortunate at the Third Thursdays, and resurrecting the Rhinebeck Choral Club as president for more than 8 years, of which her parents were both members. My father has taken over his mother's position as curator at the Museum of Rhinebeck History. with their family's period of significance in this community and village almost as long as the period of significance of the Historic Building Protection Code, after growing up in the village a half a block away from one another, with my brother and his wife continuing operation at A.L. Stickles while raising their boys, soon both to be graduates of Rhinebeck High School, with my sister recently purchasing a home on Chestnut Street, where my father used to be able to peer over the fence from Mulberry Street at my mother's house on Chestnut Street, and myself returning to the area, purchasing a home in Elizaville down the street from the home where my grandmother had her wedding reception. Their children also continue that historical connection. I'm honored to be here before you tonight to discuss the return of children of this village who are now in their 70s and looking forward to aging in place in a newly redeveloped home, of which more than 85% of 42 Mulberry's existing home history is my father and our family's shared history. Now, I could go on, but I understand your time here is valuable, so let's jump into discussion of the proposed redevelopment of 42 Mulberry Street. The parcel is a 0.5 acre parcel located on the west side of the street with an existing 1.5 story, 3-bedroom home, which the property card suggests was built in 1940. The existing home is 1,326 square feet with a 96 square foot covered front porch and a 30 square foot rear deck. As I mentioned, 85% of the history of this home is stewardship under my father's family. Its historical significance is very much our family's historical significance. I have met with the code enforcement officer and the clerk. They seem to indicate that the application for demolition would most likely be referred to the chairman and this board for further discussion of the certification for removal and demolition, which is what brought us before you this evening. In review of Chapter 64 of the Zoning Code, the code defines a contributing building as a building within the village now or in the future having one or more of the following characteristics. Designated as a historic landmark by the federal or state government or by any department thereof. This home does not have that designation. Located within the Village of Rhinebeck Historic District, with the exception of homes and buildings identified below as non-conforming. Under current codified rules, this home is outside of the period of significance, understanding the future expansion is imminent. Additionally, an argument could be made that this home meets the definition and exception of a non-contributing building. Listed as individual buildings or building complexes on the National Register of Historic Places. This home does not have that designation. 4, designated as a local landmark by the village. This home does not have that designation. B, the term contributing building or historic building shall also apply to any building or any structure that in the future is designated and included as an individual building or building complex or contributing building in a district of the National or State Register of Historic Places or designated as a local landmark by the village. Again, this home does not have that designation. The code goes on to define a non-contributing building as any building within the historic district that has not been designated as a federal, state, or local landmark and has one or more of the following characteristics. It is not consistent with any of the architectural styles identified in the chapter, or it is not present during the period of significance, 1700 to 1930, and does not independently meet the register criteria. Or C, due to alterations, disturbances, additions, or other changes, it no longer possesses historic integrity or is otherwise not capable of yielding important information about the period of significance. I would suggest that this definition better suits the existing residents at 42 Mulberry Street. I've provided the handouts of the existing building. They show elevations from north, south, east, and west, as well as shots of the backyard. They're wide enough so that you can see the perspective of the neighboring parcels. So before you are the photos and elevations of the existing home and finished materials for the proposed home. Behind me, I have existing surveys, proposed site plans, as well as conceptual architecture for the proposed new construction. So I'd like to open the discussion with the board at this time to discuss how the existing home is defined
and what permitting requirements for redevelopment would be required, if any, related to Chapter 64. And I offer that we are prepared to detail and discuss the site plan for redevelopment and architecture, as well as justification for demolition versus renovation of the existing home. We'll proceed as you suggest.
Yeah, I guess the first relevant question is this a contributing building in the National Register Historic District?
Does anyone have Neil Lawson's comments? This building is on the state and federal historic register. It's just not in the new village historic district, which hasn't been approved yet. So I don't have with me what Neil Larson said about the building.
Well, it's included as a contributing structure in the National Register nomination form,
And that's
which was approved by the state and the federal
state
government.
and federal.
Does it say what year it was built?
1940, which surprised me. I would have guessed post-war. Do we have a firm date on it? I know what the property tax code says, but do you have a firm date?
1940, and again in 1951, my father's parents purchased the building. 85%, if 1940 holds true, of this building's history is my father's family's history.
So I believe it's a 1940 building.
Do.
So it falls in the period of significance for the new National Register expanded historic district, which was approved in the last couple years.
Yeah.
2021, I think, was when the nomination was done. So it is on the National Register and the State Register of Historic Places. I'm not sure you can contest that. We can show you the nomination form. And I think that's pretty much confirmed. And then we had a lengthy discussion as to whether, because the village hasn't approved it as part of the local historic district, and the discussion as to whether that should or should not happen, this expanded area. We got an attorney, the village attorney, went through the laws, and the opinion was, and we can provide you with that opinion if you haven't seen it, is that the new National Register expanded historic district is subject to Chapter 64. So that demolishing a building, because under contributing building, the definition of it is any one or more of the following characteristics, and as number one is designated as a National Historic Landmark under the federal, are located within the Rhinebeck Village Historic District. Listed. So that was the lawyer's opinion, the village attorney's opinion, is that anything in that expanded historic district is subject to the demolition law.
So there needs to be a justification. There are rules about historic demolition permit as to why the building needs to be torn down.
So as I mentioned, we are prepared to discuss that. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
first get over the first hurdle, and then
Yeah.
absolutely we can discuss other aspects of the building which justify redevelopment of the site as opposed to reconstruction of the existing building.
Right.
So the construction materials utilized, obviously, from this home are 83 years old. This would require a replacement of windows, insulation, wiring, plumbing, and more. Building materials and structural improvements would be required. We've done a hazardous material assessment of the building. The siding is asbestos, so we will have to deal with removing that, which is a benefit to the community and the building. And also the structural integrity and construction of the building wouldn't allow for the addition of a second story. As we had talked about just briefly about the small backyards, the part of this lot that is constraining is actually the physical dimensions of the lot. The existing building footprint is small, approximately 1,200 square feet of impervious hard surface area. So to do any kind of an expansion here and update the site plan to modern standards, which means septic systems and other things that would need to be done, we don't have any space or room on this site. So we wouldn't be able to move the home or, put an addition on it in any way. So when we look at the proposed site plan, what we've done in developing the architecture and thinking about using this existing building is all we're actually looking to do is expand the rear line of the porch. You can see here this back deck stops, so we would just continue this line and additionally continue the front porch line, all staying within the existing footprint of the building. That would allow us to provide new construction so that expansion of the space could be 2 stories. My parents would also like to investigate utilizing solar on the building. Another reason why you'd have to go into the building, completely gut it down, reinforce the entire building to be able to even consider putting a second story on it. The existing home has building code issues. There is a dormer bedroom, which is actually an illegal bedroom on the top floor of this. It's where my father and his siblings actually grew up. But it's a small place and almost like an attic with storage space on the sides. You can see from this photo the second story is not a reasonable space to accommodate. The staircase that leads to that is also steep and does not meet any building codes. That's tucked in on this back corner over here. So that doesn't leave any placement for a staircase within the building footprint itself that could then accommodate a second story and access to a second story. Additionally, you would have to reinforce the structure from the basement up to be able to accommodate that staircase. Lastly, one of the biggest issues of the existing home is that the first finished floor is approximately 4 feet above grade. There is a mix of obvious architecture in the community, and especially on this street, where some vary, but this is a place where my parents are looking to age in place, and to have the building raised up 4 feet is obviously difficult. We also have handicapped family members, so access into the home has been prohibitive. My father's sister hasn't been able to visit my grandmother as freely because of that reason. So that's one of the big keys. So we've looked at these aspects, and in our proposed site plan, we've also taken into consideration some of the requirements such as existing parking areas. If you note on this existing site, the actual driveway is for 1 car and it's located in the front yard. We would be looking to go ahead and relocate the driveway to the south side yard so that it could accommodate 2 vehicles behind the front porch line. More in continuing with the Chapter 64 and other zoning code requirements. As I mentioned, the limited lot area makes makes sense to have a vertical addition. Again, the streetscape is also going to remain similar. We're proposing to utilize all of the existing points of ingress and egress in their existing locations. So the front door stays where the front door is currently, and the porch is extended. The side door that exists would stay in the location of the existing side door. The rear door would stay in the location of the rear door, presenting a very similar aspect, from the streetscape. So those were some of the things that we looked at in justifying, why it would be necessary to do this. Construction costs, when you start to look at a dollar amount of this, it becomes almost equal. A complete redoing of this building, again, you wouldn't be able to deal with the elevation change. That's impossible utilizing the existing foundation. It would be almost a similar cost to construct a new building as opposed to trying to retrofit an existing building. If you were to try to eliminate that elevation change, you would end up with a crawl space that wouldn't be usable. So those are just some of the aspects that we've taken a look at as far as justifying the hardship.
You have a 3-bedroom house now with 1 functionally difficult bedroom, is that right?
There's actually 2 functionally difficult bedrooms on the second story.
One
One
down,
bedroom
2
downstairs, and 1 bathroom for 5 people. I have no idea how they did that.
Those were the days, we all grew up that way. And we all, a lot of us live in old houses that are not up to code, but have stood for 200 years. Is there a septic field on this property?
No, the existing house, I do not believe even has a septic tank. So it's a straight pipe into a seepage pit in the rear yard. We have worked with the Dutchess County Department of Health, done deep test investigations in the rear yard. We have adequate area to accommodate a current standard septic system, and we've actually gone ahead and started on that proposal. We would like to keep the same 3 bedrooms. However, when we take a look at some of the architecture, the house is only proposed right now for 2 bedrooms upstairs, but we would design the septic system to accommodate 3 bedrooms. The reason for that is, should it ever be necessary to change one of the rooms downstairs to be more accommodating, if it's necessary, that we would have the ability to do that and create a bedroom there.
So you have a 3-bedroom house and you're proposing a 3-bedroom house.
That's correct.
If you retrofitted this house, you wouldn't have to redo the septic system. Unless it's failing.
We would certainly want to put in a septic tank, and the seepage pit, I believe, is less than 20 feet from the building. So it would be very difficult to modify and completely renovate a home and not suggest to upgrade the septic system.
Why is it set 4 feet up? Is there a traceable reason that it's set so high on its foundation?
That was how it was constructed.
That's not because of groundwater, not because of rock, not because of anything?
No.
Does it have a full basement?
It has a full basement, yeah. Our deep test went down to 8 feet with no water, no rock.
Okay. Just one of those things.
Saved on hand digging.
Probably.
And it's
I
a
think
block.
frost still goes down.
Yeah.
It's a block foundation. It is not poured concrete. It's 1940s construction.
Yeah. Well, we are still up against this demolition code problem. It would be easier for us to say we could maybe live with demolishing the upper floor and making it into 2 functional bedrooms and keeping the design of the house the same way. That could be, I think, on the table as an alternative if we can't, because if you look at the criteria for approving a demolition of a National Register building, the building or portion of the building is in such condition that it's not feasible to preserve or restore, and we've applied that to real basket cases that are just about ready to fall down, not functional houses that can be retrofitted.
Retrofitted in how the existing floor plan is smaller rooms. You're moving a lot of walls, which are moving structural supports. So it's essentially tearing it down to the foundation and reconstructing it on the existing foundation. To be able to accommodate any of the space on the second story, as well as modifying anything on the interior of the first floor existing.
We just approved, just a block down on the corner of Platt, the red brick building is undergoing a construction to add a second floor to it, to the existing building. And that was, sort of justifiable to us. We've only granted 3 demolition permits in the history of the demolition law. And that was one for a building on Livingston, which was actually falling down. Second one was for 37 South Street, which again was also it was a close vote, 3-2, but 3 people at least felt it was falling down. And then the police station, which was, again, a 3-2 vote. It was, marginal. It couldn't be used for a police station, but the building was sound. So it's a rare thing that we've granted demolition permits on buildings on the historic register. Just 3 since this law came into effect over a dozen years ago. So
In my case, my grandfather built his house in Hyde Park in 1940, and it looks a lot like that. And I had his book that he used to do it, How to Build Your Dream House for $2,500 with 10-cent 2x4s.
Right.
And asbestos siding. And when they got old, and then my mother, who was born in the house, and then I had to take care of her, aging in place in a house that's built under 1940 standards, I spent 8 years with a lot of problems dealing with elderly people who can't maneuver in tight little spaces. That is very similar to my life, and I would have no problem voting for demolition on this, because your plans would be a big improvement. That neighborhood is really showing improvement.
Comments are appreciated.
I think add, maybe I'm coming from a similar place on this, in that you're not in the historic district, and I understand the arguments you're making, and I think, you know, I'm 50-50, it's tough. I can see an argument that we ask you to keep it, and I can see an argument be made to tear it down. And I think the thing that would push me over the edge towards voting for the demolition would be item number 4 that we're asked to consider, and that is that the planning board shall further determine that the removal or demolition will not result in a significant avoidable diminution of the historic character of the community. So I know I said we're not in the historic district, but what I'm thinking more about is the neighborhood context. And for me to vote for demolition here, if you could make a very strong case, a streetscape case, and present this architecture next to the neighboring parcels, talk about it in relation to the parcels across the street. Already we're starting from a strange spot in that we're talking about going up when the neighboring houses are lower. And I think if you can create a really strong argument about the context and the way it fits that context, so not to impact this street by putting what will very likely read as a new house as currently presented. And then one step further would be to really pull out the details that let it fit in on the street and fit in the village of Rhinebeck overall. You know, you've done some of that already. You know, you show us some fiber cement siding. I'd encourage you to put the smooth side out. We require the smooth side to be out. Your drawing shows the textured side out. But when it comes to some things about the structure itself, you know, I'm going to have a harder time, you know, claiming that fits into the context of the street and the village overall. I think, you know, some of the architectural features could be enhanced to make them something that is a thing that fits on the street. You know, they're pulling from a lot of, in my opinion, they're pulling from a lot of different architectural styles, and I think they just lack a little bit of like uniting into something that's exciting, and you know, we can look at and say, you know what, this is not worse, it's in fact better than what's there today. And you know, I'd offer just a couple of points with that. One of them most significantly, just in terms of the arrangement of the windows and you know, following some of the laws that go with, you know, arrangement of windows on buildings, you know, use the golden triangle and figure out where things get placed and think about them in the context of whatever architectural style we're working towards. It seems like some form of farmhouse style we're going for with the gable forward, you know, more of a farmhouse type elevation. So if hues were pulled from something like that and they made the case strongly that this is a nice piece of design and it fits the streetscape very well, I think I'd be more inclined to lean towards the demolition and say we're getting something as good if not better. But that case I think would need to be made for me in number 4, because 1, 2, and 3, well, it's questionable whether 2 applies, but 1 and 3 are sort of shaky in terms of arguments in my opinion. So I'd encourage you to present it from that perspective.
We do have some, you know, architecture. You know, can we speak about that in a little more detail? You know, this would be the streetscape as proposed. You know, looking at, like you said, fiber cement with 6-inch exposure. You know, a standing seam metal roof, which is more in period, certainly, and you know. Doors across the front facade, as well as, you know, the porch in primarily the same locations. Is there anything about the arrangement of this other than, you know, the windows? You know, the existing home is 6 over blank for windows. You know, we're proposing 4 over 4. You know, and then as far as style or texture, you know, we had originally maybe thought about some more like scalloped siding to kind of break up the front facade at the top. I'm just, kind of curious about, if you have any more direction.
I have a quick question. We're between issues here, and that is on the National and State Historic Register. It's not in the Village Historic District. We modified the code several years ago to say that we have site plan approval. This was mostly for 37 South Street. We have site plan approval in any new construction in the Village Historic District. Do we have approval of the construction of the new building or just the demolition permit?
Good question.
I believe it's a demolition permit, but I'm just arguing the point that one of the arguments you can make for demolition is when you look at the context, what it'll do to the neighborhood, what's it being replaced with, is sort of where I'm looking at the
We have the
demolition.
black house with picture windows on Plot Avenue because we don't have to do approval of houses not in the historic district.
Right.
So
Understood.
I don't think we have any say in what he builds. We only have say in a public hearing for a demolition permit that's justifiable according to the code.
But I think if you're gonna use paragraph 4, which I think would be the only way you could approve a demolition, it talks about diminution or removal will not result in significant diminution of the historic character of the community. So I think having a design that would be sympathetic with the neighborhood could make that demolition permit easier to come by,
That's my.
perhaps.
But do we have to approve the new construction plans?
No, you wouldn't, but you would say,
A condition on a demolition permit?
I think you could do that it has to maintain certain themes of the neighborhood. It has to fit in the context. Maybe instead of a full 2-story building, you do a shed dormer, which is consistent with buildings in that side of the street. Tend to have shed dormers with cross gables rather than front gables.
There's a front gable, a couple doors down, but yeah, any or all of those things, I think, the burden sort of comes back to say, what do we get in its place, right? We're giving something up, which is, listed as something significant and important and to be protected, and we're trading it for something else. And I think the argument has to be strong for us to consider allowing that to happen. Otherwise, I think I lean towards, well, what can we do to help this existing structure meet the needs that you have for it?
Can we, since this is just an informal discussion, can we ask our representative from the Board of Trustees to talk about the timetable for a decision on whether this may come into play, whether we would have site plan or not? Not to put you on the spot.
Like clicking through all the things that are on my to-do list. My goal is to have this question resolved before the end of the. Hi, I'm Lydia.
Hi, Lydia. I'm Donna.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. My goal is to have this question resolved before the end of the current fiscal year, which is the end of May. Don't write that down, Miranda, please. I don't know if, there's a lot that needs to happen before that happens, but, at least to get a proposal in front of Dutchess County by then.
So in theory, this could move forward before any change in the status of the laws.
Yeah, and at the very least, what we're trying to reconcile at the village board level is what you're encountering. The fact that they have control over a demolition permit, but they don't have control over site plan. So the question that we ultimately need to resolve at the village board level is, we need to make those match, and whether we make them match with the new historic district or with the old historic district or some mushy combination of both is the question that we're dealing with. Because, just listening to them talk, I agree with the idea that if 4 is a criteria that can be used in a demolition permit, then the planning board then needs to have control over what is replaced. And it just makes it a little awkward as you're witnessing what's going on. So, months not years, and, you know, if we're talking in terms of a newborn baby, then weeks, is my goal here, so.
All right, but at this point, we only have control over demolition.
And we have no control.
Even that, I'm not convinced about, but that's what the attorney said. When I read this, there's all sorts of conflicting language in here,
Yeah.
which makes it very hard to enforce with any sense of surety.
I think that you heard a lot of good points. And I think the idea that if we were to seriously consider the demolition permit, it would have to be the item 4 diminution. And as Darren points out, speaking for myself, I would want there to be a condition. I would want to say we would review this and consider it on condition of site plan approval. I would say that, and for that diminution, for example, and John and Michael and Darren have pointed out, there are a number of things that you can do to make this probably more in keeping with what is likely to become a historic district, right? And the fact that it's already on the national and federal level. So for example, those 3 windows at the top don't look like anything I would have expected to see in a historic building, right? I get the point, which is a very valid point, that for someone to age in place, which I think we should support, you don't want them going up 4 or 5 steps to get into the house. The elevation of the first floor of the house, as you point out, is just a consequence of how the house was built in 1940, right? Also, so in other words, I think we should continue this discussion on the concept that you present a plan that satisfies, that it doesn't diminuate, so to speak, the rest of the neighborhood. I would expect to see something different. Somebody mentioned maybe put shingles in the top peak and clapboard on the bottom to break the...
He said that.
You said that. Okay.
And I didn't say that.
Okay, well, I'm sure there would be some opinions, but I would like to see a plan that would serve that better. I see that the reason there's 3 windows in the front here is that when we look at the floor plan on the second floor, suggested floor plan.
Well, they actually have 3 windows.
No, it's to the far right,
It's on the right-hand side.
far right,
So the
middle.
2 bedrooms,
Oh,
two
okay.
bedrooms are on
Yeah.
the north and south ends, and
Yeah.
the west side that
Right.
faces the street.
Yeah.
This is also just down from the fairgrounds, where we know it gets pretty
Right.
busy.
Yeah.
Those are windows that are on the street, so they are centered in the hallways and in the stair space, as
Yeah.
opposed to being in the bedrooms.
Right.
There are existing second-story windows on the existing residence
Right.
on both the north and south ends that are represented fairly
Yes.
similarly in this plan
Yeah.
on all levels.
These are quite long rooms here,
20 by 10.
right? And someone else mentioned you could have a slope roof with a gable in the front, right?
And this could be a shed dormer with the
Yes.
front gang windows.
Yes. So there are
Theoretically.
a number of options, I think, that could make this very pleasing to the site of
70 Mulberry Street.
of the surrounding community. And I would be open that if we could get that and act with that as a condition relating to item 4, that there probably can be a solution here. Also, so here's your existing seepage pit, which is probably pretty old. Who knows what that's putting into the groundwater. I do notice that in your proposal, there is what I would presume to be a Board of Health approved septic system for a 3-bedroom residence.
That is the size for that, and we have actually begun that process for approval of that septic system. Yes.
That's another thing which I think would be a positive, to get rid of a real old seepage pit and replace it with a Board of Health approved septic system, which in the board, they're pretty strict, so I have a lot more confidence in them with the seepage system there.
The driveway's another issue.
Yeah, so you've got basically the concrete ribbon here.
Yep.
So you're not going to have a garage.
But you would get rid of the front yard parking.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Yeah, which is kind of an eyesore
Yes,
in the neighborhood there. And it looks like it's long enough to get out of there. You would come in here and you would enter, you would only have to go up 2 steps to get into the house with the lower elevation.
Right,
It's one with some ramps potentially.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. We need to have a public hearing on a demolition
Yeah.
permit. And I don't see how legally we can put a condition on it that we want you to build that house.
no, I don't think you can, yes, I think you can put a condition on it based on the architecture,
Yes.
the replacement architecture. I don't think you can say we have to have site plan approval.
Okay.
We want windows,
So we could say
Siding.
we're willing to invoke item 4 as long as it looks like it's not going to diminish the character of the neighborhood. And this house, as proposed, we say does not do that, or it makes a better attempt at blending in.
Yeah, it seems to be like the chicken and egg thing here, as though wouldn't we have to see the site plan to say, we're now satisfied that item 4 has been satisfied, because
We would
what
have-
you're proposing will not diminuate the neighborhood, but in fact will, improve it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to see the site plan,
Yeah,
but it would be a stronger argument with it.
okay.
So we can ask for it, and if we're confident that this is what's going to be built, we would have ammunition to approve
Yes.
under paragraph 4. What do you think, David? You're
I don't know,
serious.
I mean, I don't, we can make those suggestions, I don't see, we can grant a demolition permit and then he could build a block house with picture windows. He's not going to, but I mean,
Certainly not.
we don't have, it's a very gray area.
I think as long as we have a condition on the demolition permit that it's going to be similar to what's being proposed as part of the public process, then
And the building department would have that when a plan is presented to them, not to us, to build this new structure.
The
And-
construction documents that are filed with the building permit.
Right, so the construction, the building permit would be looked at and said, no, wait a minute, you've got a big picture window in the front, you can't have that, you have to have vertical, windows and,
it would have to be consistent. That would
We
be the
can also
condition.
get
of
an
the motion.
affidavit from them that basically entertains that what was granted under your certificate of demolition of a historic structure is what you need to follow as you submit your construction plans for a building permit.
And it is a 2-story house replacing a 1-story, which is a bit of difference, but if you walk down Mulberry Street, most of the houses on the other side are all 2 stories.
Yeah.
And when you go down 2 or 3 more, it's 3 stories.
Right.
Right, next to the Army Barracks house. So I think, yeah.
Can I
And most of the 1-story buildings on this side have either dormers or,
Yes,
And there is going to be a public hearing.
yes. Now, we can't promise
When they're
anything,
ready.
we'll have to wait for the public hearing, but I think we could at least move forward with a public hearing.
yeah.
No, they
I
haven't,
have
they
this,
have,
can
I know
I,
they have to apply film.
they have to apply first.
can I speak up?
Sure.
Yes, please.
The houses on both sides are 1 step in. So bringing the house down to make it accommodating for the handicapped people in our family and us as we get older is consistent with what's already there in the neighborhood.
That's right.
If you look at this image,
Yeah.
the house adjacent to it,
Mr.
it
Vick-
does, it
Both-
does not
both
have,
Vickery's and-
it's not a 1-story, it's more of a 1.5 story. Both the houses on either side are listed, I believe, as 1 3/4 stories.
Yes.
And ours is listed as a 1.5 story.
Right.
So, the increase to a 2-story is not as dramatic in context. And I'd just like to address the dormer, the concept of that. One of the big things that we're looking to do with the home is reduce its energy impact. So we're looking to provide solar on the home. In order to do that, we need some southern exposure. That requires changing the building gable to be able to accommodate that, so that we have southern exposure.
So
The
you would
roof
be,
line.
you would be proposing covering the front roof of
No,
the house
the
with
side.
solar panels?
South side,
South side.
which would be seen from the roof, you know.
Oh, okay.
Generally speaking, in the historic district, we try to keep the solar out of view
It would-
because that's not consistent with the historic district. So if you had a side gable facing the road, you could have it on the west side. And it would be out of public view. You could still have solar. It wouldn't be quite as efficient as south side, but it would still be usable solar.
Could you explain the gable thing to me? This is, we've done 3 old houses. None of the houses we've ever lived in have been any younger than 1900.
Yeah.
And we've done 3. We just finished the 3rd one in Claremont. This house is something I've been familiar with since I was a child. And I've thought about it a great deal, and I did the interior design and sent it to the architect, and he provided the exterior. But I don't understand the gable part.
Go back to the neighborhood shop. They have side gable. This house.
I know what a dormer is, and I know the difference between the chicken coop one and the dog one.
See, the slope faces the road as opposed to faces the side.
If we flip it, is how we get this 2nd story.
But you can get a 2nd story either way.
But
It's
it
just
would
it
be
would be
taller.
more consistent with the existing house and the 2 neighbors. I can't remember exactly what this house looks like, but which are both side gables instead of front gables.
Yeah. I remember when Mr. Vickery put the gable on the back of his house.
You can still get 2 stories. The solar is
That's important
Yeah, so these
to
are
us.
solar. I think the point we're trying to make is that, that's your case to present. It seems like, from what I'm hearing, number 4 is maybe the strongest argument, if we all agree as such. And, I guess my comment on the architecture is it feels like it was designed from the inside out. So very nice interior plan, the architect put a skin around it.
Yeah.
And I think what you're hearing are just some comments on
Right.
how it might be made to fit the streetscape a little bit better, whether it's the addition of a gable or varying the relief of some front facade, or even just taking the proportions and just analyzing them the way the windows relate and the width of the box versus the height. And there's some, there's well-tried rules for this kind of thing. And then when you come back, you're presenting, 1, the architecture of the building with that in mind. 2, some of the materials to be used, a special focus on windows. And I'm not saying any particular window, I'm saying the window that's most appropriate for the architectural style that you're trying to put forth, right? Whatever that might be that you feel fits the streetscape. And then 3 is just some images of it on the street, so we can process it how, driving down the street, it'll feel, as opposed to the way it feels today. And that's, I believe, your strongest argument for a demolition permit, where we can say, oh, this feels pretty good, right? We like this is tasteful, this is thoughtful, this is something that belongs here. And they made a very strong argument, and they seem to be doing a very thoughtful job of bringing the right materials to the table, and then going ahead and implementing that, provided we vote for the demolition. So I think that, these are suggestions, not saying put a dormer on it or change the facade, but they're ways you might make it feel more appropriate for the neighborhood.
If you imagine this building between those 2 buildings, it's going to look really out of place. It's a full 2 stories. It's got the side gable as opposed to the front gable as opposed to a side gable, inconsistent with both your neighbors. It's going to stick out the way that Barrick's house sticks out in the neighborhood. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, because both
And
of
the
them.
only way we can, I think, agree to paragraph 4 is if we think the replacement house is not going to affect the neighborhood character.
What we don't show here and haven't provided in this is that directly across the street, the majority of those homes are 2 stories.
Right.
So it would, if you look at a mirror image of this, you will see the exact same thing on the other side. And as you go down this street, you both see there is a 3-story home as well.
Yeah, that's several way, yeah.
Consideration for using the exact same footprint of the existing building. We're not asking for real expansion of the building footprint in any way. And then I do understand the historical designation and the significance of that. But since it is constructed as it's listed as 1940, is there any consideration for the fact that, in 1951 it was purchased by my father's family, and we have been stewards of this home for 85% of its life, you know, the historical value is valuable, and I understand it to the state and federal government. But, you know, as far as, and the village, I do understand that. But as far as, you know, our family as well, and that, you know, is there any consideration for that? Is that?
I think, Seth, if you're asking that, you're kind of drifting towards a cultural preservation argument, which would argue to preserve the house as is, if someone accepted that argument. I want to get back to what you said is you're concerned about energy and conserving and environmental impact, et cetera. So if this were a new home, no doubt it would be very energy efficient. You would probably have thicker exterior walls with more insulation, much better windows, much better insulation. You might want to consider geothermal heating and cooling.
We have.
Which I can tell you personally, will amount to a significant savings. Probably more than you're going to benefit by putting some solar panels on a south-facing slope. And so if that's what's kind of in your mind about not wanting to consider the front slope of the roof as it faces the street and is experienced by the community, because you want that south-facing slope, you might want to reconsider that.
Can we look again at the floor plan? The current access staircase to the second story is attic stairs. And so it has to be replaced.
Yeah.
To put in a staircase that could eventually take a chairlift or just made sense in the house, it had to go in the middle.
Okay.
And that made it, the roof line change easier for the staircase too.
Well, yeah. So in other words, this is the proposed stair.
Right, and
But again, if your roof was sloping this way instead of this way, right, instead of peaking this way, I get it. You would have a high thing from front to back. But if your roof was the other way, you'd have a high thing from side to side. You see?
Shouldn't affect the center stairway.
No, it shouldn't.
There's other roof lines too, I mean, hips and things.
right.
But we're ahead of ourselves, so we have to have him apply to Brian for
Right.
a historic demolition permit, the fourth one, since the law went into effect, and then we have to have a public hearing to talk about it,
Right.
and then make a decision and see what conditions we could legally ask for, which would give the building department something to,
Yeah.
a
And
guideline to look at.
along those lines, what was your suggestion about an affidavit, Ryan?
There can be an affidavit drafted, signed by them, notarized, that based on the outcome of the certificate of demolition, that in that resolution for the certificate, what is stated must be followed when they submit a building permit as well as construction drawings.
So then what's the next step, a submission of a...
They have to,
Yeah,
they'll take your feedback, they'll go back, they'll chew on it.
Hearing.
Seth will reach out to me, and whatever their decision is, I will provide them with the application.
So you have to apply formally, then appear before us, we'll set a public hearing, and we'll hear what people say, and then
So,
we can move forward after that.
clarification. You know, Chapter 64 requires applying for the demolition permit directly to Justin and having Justin bring it to you or deny it. That's sort of that process. So that's one application. The second part of that application is obviously, you know, an application to this board for the removal and
It's the
demolition.
same application.
It's the same application.
It's the
Okay.
same application.
So we could do it at the same time, you know, submitting to both Justin and this
Justin will
board.
have to say, I can't rule on this because it's on the National Historic Register.
Understood.
It's up to the planning board, so,
Understood.
you know, he's not allowed to do that, so, just one application.
A suggestion that has not been made, have you talked to your neighbors about this?
Yes. Show them
Go
all.
back to them,
Yeah,
ask them if they would write letters of support.
okay.
Not that it's going to carry you to the end zone, but it does have an impact with this board that your neighbors are on board with your proposal.
You don't want a public hearing where somebody comes and says, I live next door, this thing's gonna be a monstrosity that's gonna overshadow my backyard and ruin my life. It's much better if the people around you are contacted and aware of what you're about to do or propose.
We've actually had those
Yeah,
conversations.
we've shared those plans.
Go
Because
further
they'll be
out.
getting-
I understand.
Go
Yeah.
further
I
out.
understand.
Yeah.
Go to the
Because we're sending
person.
notices out to everybody in the neighborhood.
We go 200 feet in every single direction. I don't suggest going 200 feet, measuring in all those directions, but go to the person that Monday through Sunday is going to walk or drive past your new house. You're going to see it every day.
Understood.
If you don't know them, introduce yourself, get acquainted, and say, hey, listen, this is what we're proposing or thinking about. Would you mind hearing, listening and finding out more about?
I think it's just important to reinforce that this is where my dad grew up. My mom grew up around the corner. They know all of these people and have known them for decades.
We'll get to,
And
we'll
they
get
are
to some
aware
letters.
and they're aware of our plan.
Most of your family grew up in my house. Frank Stickle bought it in
Yeah.
1909.
His grandfather.
AD.
Yeah.
Another.
I have a picture of the three of them, Frank, Alfred, and A. Lee, in a Model T Ford in front of my garage in 1909.
Yeah, we have that too.
Another, one more suggestion, and I applaud your concern for environmental issues, renewable resources. So my wife and I built a house at 37 South Street. We installed in the new house geothermal heating and cooling. Solar panels would not have enhanced the neighborhood. They would have looked pretty bad, and the roof line didn't support it. However, we have 90 solar panels in a community solar array in Kingston that we own. So we own them. We bought them. Instead of them being installed on our house, they're in a community farm across the river.
Right.
So you might want to look into that because there may be community solar arrays that have panels available that you can rent or buy.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
know.
another option for houses that you can't easily put panels in the property or on the roof.
Another thought, you can take it or leave it. This has actually a fairly nice little porch on the front.
Yeah.
And incorporating existing features from the original building might be a selling point. So if you could live with a porch that was similar to the one that you already have, attached to the front of the whatever building you designed behind it, it would be a little remembrance of that building, and so the character would not have changed from that
I
nice
have a
little
picture
sitting
of
point.
him at 18 sitting on that porch with his feet up.
Yeah, I looked at the Google
Yeah.
maps on
And
this
see
today,
James-
and there was a woman
see-
sitting on the front
That's my
porch.
My mother-in-law.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in that photo that you have in front of you.
Yeah, I can't see it here, but.
Well, that's why I insisted when I sat with the architect, I wanted the porch. But
Yeah.
every family member has said, extend it across the whole front, make it a whole bigger porch.
You can do that, but,
Yeah.
I just thought
That
it has
is a
sort of a nice.
continuation of the community in the family, where they're not trying to do this to make a big house and then flip it. They've
No,
been
we're
here
not.
since the 1700s, they want to remain here. And their story is so similar to mine. I spent 8 years trying to get my father up the same amount of stairs, and when he's dropping on the front lawn and you're calling an ambulance to come to get him 5 steps in, that's something you remember. So retrofitting is not easy. We couldn't do it on his house, and I don't see it probably being able to be done well on here. Something newer.
Several people have come to us to ask to bump out in the back of the house and add a master bedroom, bathroom, because I can't get to the second floor
Right,
anymore. I'm
right.
gonna live on one floor. When any guests come, they can stay upstairs. So, there are lots of ways of doing it, rather than a $30,000 elevator. But, there are different ways you can do that, but you have to think about that. But you have to get something to Ryan, and then the public hearing, then make a presentation to the public, and get supporters if they think this is great. You don't want to be yelled at a public hearing because you haven't done your homework, so.
And you could do things like maintain the existing character of the windows.
6 over blanks as opposed
Yeah, I
to
mean,
4 over 4s.
That can be done.
Yeah, I mean, little things like that to say we're not trying to get rid of the house altogether. We're trying to pick up on themes, but we need the full second. The bedrooms upstairs are non-functional and the foundation is too high. And we're gonna retrofit those to as existing example, but the end result will look like it always belonged in the neighborhood.
That was the consideration for the door placement, keeping them in almost exactly the same locations.
All right, we,
All right, we'll see you at some point.
what?
We can't do anything, right?
Oh, yeah,
No,
I
it's
think we've
just
done
an
what we can
informal
do.
discussion. We appreciate all of your comments
Thank
and
you
look
for
forward to
your
moving forward with an application.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, our current house in Claremont, we built a garage and a sunroom and put solar on it. Our electric bill for last year was $350.
You see what his energy bill is for
My
the
electric
geothermal.
bill for the last 2 years is 0.
Zero. Well, we have forced hot air conditioning for the whole house. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we wear you
I
out.
love your story.
Come on down, Huck.
Oh, I was wondering why you're out there. So you must be
I thought Jordan Valdez.
70 Mulberry Street.
So you can follow along.
Thinking of raising the roof,
84.
about raising the roof.
84.
What you doing? Here it is.
So I didn't realize you owned this house.
It was
Or
a
you
Trom-
just
it was a-
represented?
It was a Trombini house.
Ah,
Trombini family. This one was built in 1941 though.
1941, okay.
This is on the, beyond the red brick house towards the
Yes.
fairgrounds.
Yes.
One of the last couple of houses.
How did it end up being so isolated out there?
Violet houses.
What?
Violet houses.
Ah,
Greenhouse.
Is that why they're considering it for historical? Because there was
No, they-
greenhouses there at one time?
no.
No.
It's under the new boundary.
The new boundary went to 50 years from 2020, I guess it was.
What was the thought behind that though? That's odd.
Well, there's been a rule of thumb in the historic preservation community that you have to be at least 50 years old to be considered for the National Register. And that got interpreted to anything 50 years is eligible. I don't agree with it, but that's the way it was done. And the National Register boards all signed off on it. And so every building that's built before 1970 in the village contiguous with the historic district was expanded to be included.
Because the other house farther north is a 73 modular.
Yeah.
It's two-bedroom modular. Now, how that's in the historic district?
Well, it's not because it's 73, not 70.
It's the house itself, not the.
Okay. So
But you're right, I
It
mean-
stops at this one because this one's 41 as opposed to,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So it depends on the date of construction. The CVS.
And then how about the one to the south of this? Because that was built by Joan Trombini.
The brick one?
No, next to the brick one. There's a
Okay,
house
next
in
to
between. And that house was built, I think, in the 70s.
It's all in the new boundary.
district. The new
It's all in the boundary. No,
I thought the new
it
district
stops at the fairgrounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
It
because your
stops
house,
at the ball field.
this house would be non-contiguous, so I'm not sure it's in the new district.
It's in the interesting thing with this, it's in the new district, it's on the list, but when you go, there's not an explanation of this house. There's no card, there's no icon to click on, there's nothing that
So it's included in
Jennifer
the paragraph
Betts,
description, but not,
the house is in the boundary,
but it's not in the map.
Wait, is this 70?
yes.
There's a description.
Well, there wasn't a description what I could find.
You can't look at the online database. It's only in that like 160 page PDF.
The Larson report?
Yeah, the online database hasn't been updated.
But how about the 73 built ranch? That's not included.
No.
Which
Yeah,
number
I
is
think
it?
so. Which
What's the
number? It
address?
goes right to the green fence, Huck.
Yeah, but that would include the 73 built ranch.
But then
Not even a ranch,
The
they're
listing is
modular.
non-contributing.
it would be listed as non-contributing if it's 73.
So
And then how about the one to the south of this particular one? That would be non-contributing too.
Apparently
The
so.
one
Yeah.
built
So
in
there'd be two?
1990?
There'd be two non-contributing and one historical.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to explain it, because I think
So,
I'll
not
go
that
off on a rant again.
not that I
May be considered, and he just
How could that be?
said,
Because it's built in 1956.
nobody was watching.
I
Wait a
think he
second.
ran out of
That's-
money on his
that's-
contract and just
No,
set up
no,
the
no,
easy
no, the
thing.
one to the south of us.
That's the only explanation I have.
66. The one
Yes.
built
It's
in
upsetting,
1990.
but we can't do anything about it. So
Yeah,
we're gonna
is it
get.
1990?
the
So that's not
identification, is
contributing.
this it?
Yeah.
So two of the
Let's
three
talk
are
about
non-contributing.
Can we have this
Since-
discussion?
No, okay, no, I'm sorry.
What,
What I want to do,
It's that dormer, right there,
Yes?
next to it, on the west elevation. That dormer.
This is the rear of the house.
you will not see that from the street.
this is what we were suggesting.
That
to the
faces
previous
his
applicant to
maple sugar shack and,
Right.
his fields
But it's on the back of the house,
on the back of the house.
this shed dormer you're talking about.
And the reason it is here for discussion, does this justify enough impact to be subject to chapter 64?
Taking it off, putting it on.
So
You
let the
know,
brick building, the whole top demolition and build a second story on the brick building, that's just far more impact than putting something you can't even
well, it's
see.
definitely not a major impact.
You can't see it from the road.
And I don't even think of it as demolition. You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cutting a hole in the ceiling and putting an
Right.
addition on.
I don't think it is. I don't
Yeah.
think it is.
Does the code enforcement officer concur?
Yeah, I don't think
He concurs with that assessment?
So
If that's
we
the
don't think
position-
this is a demolition.
So
This is an addition. And additions aren't covered by the demolition law,
That's right.
unless you're tearing the ceiling off or, the roof off or something, yeah.
And even on buildings in the historic district, people have come and said, I want to bump out, you can't see it from the street, an apartment because I'm old, I'm in a bedroom because I'm old and I can't get up there. Or I want to bump out a kitchen and dining room, you can't see it from the street. Even on historic buildings, we've allowed that. This is not even a historic building in the historic district, which we have no say over. So I don't think that this is a problem.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. Also, there's some relief. So in other words, the shed is not going from end to end. There's relief here,
Yeah.
right? That brings it in, which makes it not look like a slapped-on addition. And we can see in the proposed plan, so this is the outline of the rear. Is that correct, Huck?
That's the thermal envelope, yeah.
This is the outline of the rear addition?
Yes.
Okay.
So is that the consensus for you guys, Mike and
I
Dan?
don't see any
All right,
issue.
then we just need to have Jordan or Larry submit a building permit
Construction?
application.
Okay.
Yep, and construction plans.
Okay.
Sorry I had to wait so long.
He loves to sit through meetings.
It wasn't, can we go back to that one? They demolished a house across the street though, right? From theirs.
Yeah.
That was before the law was in place.
That was
Ah.
2019,
And we
2018.
have no say.
No, that was a couple years ago.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they
Pre-COVID,
demolished it
though.
because it wasn't, we didn't
Yeah.
get this ruling about it, and it's in the new historic district, but not yet, so we have no say. They could build another black house with picture windows on the vacant lot.
They teared that down in 2019, and the new, Neil Larson didn't finish until 2020, or even
It wasn't
2021.
passed by the federal government.
It was submitted, it wasn't passed yet. 'Cause
It was
I
a
remember
complete
going-
disaster though. that-
Well, it was the
It
Arnold
was,
House.
it was
really
It
awful.
was in bad shape.
But he probably could have gotten demolition. Of the three that have been granted, two of them were falling down, but all the permits that were granted, except the Bill Clark one, which is totally falling down, were 3-2 votes. So it's still, this one is gonna be the fourth vote in like 12 years, or more than that. In 2009, the law was passed, so that's 14 years.
And if this house was in the original historic district, I'm not sure we'd be so lenient.
Yes.
Because, it does, it's in a transition period, and it makes it hard to enforce the law when you have
I'm working on it,
conflicting or
I'm
questionable laws.
working on it, I'm working on it.
Talk to the lady over there.
You had the old Fraley house, right? That you-
37 South Street, behind the Church of the Good Shepherd.
Oh,
It was
no,
one
that
of the
was
parish
Fraley,
houses.
that was the one next to it.
Yeah.
That was the church house.
All right, we
I
haven't
would
gotten a
think.
building permit or anything from that vacant lot on Mulberry, have we?
No. No.
Pass the law quickly.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
We need to have
Thank you.
You're all
consensus
set,
on what
Mike?
law to pass.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Huck.
Okay, folks, so, even though there's this thing called the village election happening March 21st, big deal. Sorry.
That's all right. Any of you want my job?
We either need to modify the meeting schedule or just have one meeting in March.
I'm looking at the calendar, you can't.
Not a lot of choices.
There's not a lot of choices. If you move it back, then it's the next week. And if you move it forward, then it's the week before the next meeting. It doesn't, and we have light agendas. I don't know, my opinion is we can just let March 21st go.
I'd be in favor of that.
But,
Yeah, and then just move on to April 4th would be the next one
Yeah,
after that.
April 4th.
So we'll skip
Good
the
night.
7th and just do the
Good night,
21st?
everybody.
So we're gonna skip the 7th of March and do the
No,
21st?
the 21st is the election.
Skip the 21st.
The voting is here.
We'll still meet on March 7th, but we will not meet March 21st.
That's when the election is?
Yeah.
Oh,
We'll meet next, after that, on April 4th.
April 4th, so it's not that.
It's not bad.
So I just need a motion to modify the meeting schedule to cancel March 21st, 2023.
I'll make the oops,
Go ahead.
oh, you go. I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and you'll let us know if there's some big glut of applications.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the biggest thing for March 7th is going to be the public hearing for the pool and other pavilion and fireplace and whatever on Montgomery Street, so.
I have one item that I wanted to bring up. A department store. We were talking about that last week.
Yep.
And I was walking through the village and looking up, and I see that they've changed the antenna array on the top of the roof up there. That, in the past, they had a small box, brick box or fake brick box, where they have an antenna hidden inside of it. And we approved that years ago. And they apparently have expanded it dramatically without talking to us. And it looks like hell, because not only does it much bigger, doesn't look like a chimney anymore, or sort of a fat chimney in the middle. It looks like a big brick box, and the brick looks fake because the corners
Don't meet.
don't meet, so you can actually see right
But
through
that's
it.
been there for a couple of years.
Well, I have a 21 aerial, which shows the small one, and
It happened that year.
Yeah, they did it in late 21 or something.
they did it without coming to us?
They said because it was a co-locator and antenna, that they were protected by the FCC, that they only needed a building permit.
So it was one of those, falls under that, what's the phrase, facilities, any rate.
Yeah.
The fairgrounds guys have told us basically to go to hell, that you have no right to tell us what to do,
It still seems to me they would have to comply with the previous site plan in terms of making sure the thing was disguised to look like something that belonged on the building rather than sort of a fake attached billboard-shaped panel that doesn't even meet at the corners.
Yeah, my understanding is we still retain some authority under, even though the federal jurisdiction's there were some local authority that still retained, and prior position would stand.
But we should then ask the zoning enforcement officer or whatever to,
We
it's a
should
very
look at-
critical building.
We
Yeah.
can try to find out if there's a statute of limitations, but
Well, we had requested certain things when it was approved as the previous version.
yeah, but
It had
when I
like a
look
cornice,
back,
it had a cornice line on the top, and it looked like a brick appendage to the building that, from the street, looked like it belonged with the building.
right,
And they've created something that doesn't look like it
They
belongs.
just added antennas, and
Yeah, but they changed the exterior
I know,
appearance.
because with the addition of the antennas, they can no longer keep that same brick cube or brick box or whatever it was. I mean, I looked back, the Shrivers never even came to you guys.
Yeah, they did.
Then I need to look further back, because I didn't.
I remember going through a site plan approval for that, and we asked not only that the brick match the original brick of the building in color and consistency from the street, you couldn't tell, and also we asked, as I remember, sort of a streamlined cornice be on the top edge of it, so it looked like a piece of a building rather than just a fake brick box.
All right, we can see what we have. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not.
I mean, if what they've done is out of compliance with the existing site plan, then we can always have legal send them a letter.
Yeah, it just seems like we can't prevent them from expanding it, I can understand that.
No.
But they would have to at least replicate the original site plan conditions in terms of architecture and quality. So it looks like it belongs with the historic building rather than being something that really stands out now. Because it's much closer to the edge, and the fact that it doesn't meet at the corner really looks bad. Did other people notice that?
I know what you're talking about, I just assumed that's what was allowed to be done
Yeah.
in my time.
I will also try to look back, because I have a feeling the same letter that Emily Svensson, planning and zoning attorney, gave you guys for the cell tower on the fairgrounds is probably the exact thing she's gonna say for this, that if it wasn't brought during then, you only have so much time to make modification or bring them in.
Seems to me like they'd have to replicate the exterior conditions that we put on the original site plan.
Yeah, if they
just make it
changed
bigger.
something and didn't come back for more approval on it.
They weren't given, they're only given a certificate of compliance for the extra antennas. It wasn't like they were given a certificate of occupancy or anything like.
Did it have to be on the front of the, couldn't it have been deeper into the roof where you couldn't see it?
Right, because that's what the existing antenna is that comes off, that's where the existing antenna was approved for T-Mobile. That's why T-Mobile left this building here, because they added the new antennas over there. We'll try to dive into it. I'll work
Okay.
with Justin.
See, as I remember, I looked at the aerials, so you can tell when it was, first came on the building, and it was between 2000 and 2004. So it must have been in somewhere in that period that we gave approvals.
I'll look back. I mean, I just pulled everything because of the signs, what we just looked at for the signs.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything about whatever they were called coming for the antenna on top of the roof.
Our records are terrible.
Well, it's not that they're terrible, it's just they're not in this office, they're down in the archives, because anything that is
Okay, well, they exist.
over a certain age goes from the filing cabinets down to the archives.
And you can get access to that?
Yes.
Good. Give it a shot at least. I
I'll
feel
check
it's
it
an
out.
important building that we
It
should
is,
just.
As long as it wasn't gifted to the Rhinebeck Historical Society.
I don't remember seeing those plans, but
Yeah.
what's her name?
Valerie.
Valerie gave us, and she was gonna dump them, and Mike said, we'll take them. So we have a lot of plans.
You have
We have plans-
32.
We have a lot of
To be
plans
exact.
in the archives. Oh, you want them back? I can
Uh,
deaccession them.
I don't know,
Pursue us for that.
some of that paper is ancient paper that would probably dissolve down in the basement, so we don't have temperature control like you guys do. So anyway, the code enforcement officer is actually here with us tonight, and he's been patiently waiting for the last 2 hours.
I'm sorry.
So could I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss some personnel departmental matters that will not have any effect or vote on the public?
All right. Motion?
I'll second.
I'll take the motion and David will second.
John and David.
Go into executive session.
Aye.
Everybody here is
Do you
qualified.
wanna pause that, Jeff, or do you wanna edit it?
Or we could, you don't need the,
I'll stop. Motion to adjourn, and then do we get a second?
We're gonna abide by it.
Before we adjourn.
No.
I need your opinion on something. As I was setting up for tonight, Mayor Bassett said, we don't need to make recordings of the planning board. That he wants Miranda to write minutes and not to do so from recorded videos. I said, well, it's not a problem. Frankly, it's a meeting, it's an important meeting. What happens in the planning board is as important to the community and what the community ends up being as what happens in the trustee meetings, is my opinion. I said, I have no problem recording them. I'm doing this on a voluntary basis, although really, they should be recorded just like the trustees are recorded.
and the town planning boards and zoning
Well,
boards.
yeah,
of course.
the mayor said the village can't afford that. So he asked me not to record them anymore.
How is it costing them money?
My price is zero right now. My point is that they should, and we mentioned this last year, we said, when you're thinking about the budget, consider adding enough in the budget for Panda to record the planning board, just like Panda records the trustees, right? We twice a month. Frankly, I'm not thinking it's gonna break the village budget, but, the mayor said he wants Miranda not to create the minutes by viewing the videos. He said, I'm making an edict, he said. Right. So, do you mind if I record the meetings?
This morning, I would have been unable to know what was going on if I hadn't spent 2 hours watching what happened on the 17th. And then I was aware of all the questions, and Darren asked great questions, to understand all the stuff. And then I was able to read the tie and bond report and see what they meant of everything that Darren talked about. So it was useful to me. I don't know.
Well, I think if we make the case that it doesn't cost a dime to the village to continue the way we've been doing it, I don't know, maybe Miranda takes more time to do the minutes because she has to watch the tape?
I mean, not for nothing. I would, even while I was taking notes tonight, I'm like, refer to the video just so I can just rewatch it and get a little bit better of a description.
But do you
So
charge the
think-
village more for watching the village?
No.
No, it costs the same?
Yeah, it's the same. It's not anymore. It's
So-
not overtime
All
or
right, you
anything
need
like
to
that.
speak to Gary then, because he said he was making an edict, he said, that Miranda will not create the minutes by watching the video, which I think is unnecessary, foolish.
Well,
Me too.
If it's available, it should be a resource that's available to you.
A helpful resource.
If it's not available, then fine, you have the notes, but,
Right, yeah, where'd it go? Brian's little tape recorder.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, if nothing else, motion to adjourn.
so do we want to resolve this anyway?
I'm just asking you, do you mind if I record the meetings voluntarily and make them available to the village until I can no longer physically do so?
I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
I prefer it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna continue doing that when I can. I don't wanna be barred from doing it, is my point.
Well, let's see if,
I don't think that can happen.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure what can happen.
Yeah,
It's a public meeting.
yeah, it is a public meeting and you're allowed to
I mean,
record.
Judy could
You're
come
allowed
and
to
sit in that
record
chair and
public
record the
meetings.
meeting. I mean, it's a public meeting. It's not
Yeah,
against the law.
I think the problem is the posting it, which is sanctioned by the village, I think. Officially,
Yeah.
it's posted, I guess anybody can do it, but,
Well,
I
the
mean,
Pan-
they're the trustee board, they have their own YouTube page, so
Yeah.
what's to say the planning board can't?
The only rule is that, as, former chair of Panda, the rule was we were not allowed to touch it. You had to
Yeah.
run it from the beginning to the end
Yes.
and burn it. No editing at
Yeah.
all was allowed,
Yeah.
except for executive session.
The legal documents are
It's
the
a legal
minutes.
document, in
Right.
a sense,
Yeah.
to record that, from Panda's view. But
Okay,
Well, let's go with it that the planning would prefer to continue to record it, and he does have control, I think, over staff time, so if he tells you you can't use the thing, then you'll probably have to abide by that. And he may suggest or order that we not post it as an official document.
Well, we'll see if it comes to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Do we vote to adjourn?
Not yet.
Motion to adjourn.
Say goodbye to Jeff.
Wait, you
No.
just made the motion.
Motion by
All
John.
right.
Second by
John,
John.
I think I
had
just made the
first.
motion.
Okay,
John had
Now you're
first.
second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're done.
Thank you.